Today's video is going to be a little different. This is a video style that I think I've only done once, maybe twice before. I'll be talking about a build. Specifically, I'll be talking about Coldslinger as I played it in Atlas Invasion. But to be clear, this isn't a build guide, and this isn't a build showcase. My character's far from complete. I played it for the first 3 days, and the gear which you will be able to observe, either through my profile or through a POV down in the description below, is going to be exactly what it was on day 3. It's not tuned for the endgame, it's not tuned for late red maps, it's not even tuned for boss farming. It was a character that I started to get bored with around 86 or 87 that I said, you know what, I'll get to 90, I might as well round off at a nice even number, but from there I'm going to call it good. So I didn't really put that much more into advancing or min-maxing the character. However, what I wanted to talk about today was my process and my experience, why I made some of the decisions I did, why my tree looks like it does, and how that might inform you next time you're trying to min-max a character. If you do prefer more polished looks at things, mechanics guides, build guides, character showcases, and the like, be sure to sub to the channel and ring the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload. On the other hand, if this does help you with your league start process or with transitioning a character into better gear, then leave a like and tell me about it down in the description below. What did you struggle with when you're transitioning a character, and what part of this video did you find helpful? So going into Atlas Invasion, I decided to play Coldslinger. I decided to play it for 2 reasons. First, it's not something that I've played in a while, and I've kind of gotten bored of a lot of the other really strong early league things just because I've played them so much. 2, it has a lot of reliability and safety for bossing. You can slow bosses, which makes them easier to manually dodge. The damage is incredibly consistent, and it has very good damage projection because your vortex will be cast on frostbolts, so you don't have to get up into melee range of an enemy if that enemy is too scary to you. At low levels, Cold Dot was amazing. I'd been using a self-cast Wintertide brand in combination with left-click Vortex. I'd kind of just walk up to stuff, cast at it a bit, and then it would die. I also got very lucky in that I found a Shade of Solaris around level 36. Once I got that, I had what was quite honestly an endgame weapon if I wasn't doing so much spell slinging stuff. It gave me 200% increased spell damage if I dealt a critical strike in the last 8 seconds across any of my skills, which was a really handy starting weapon to find. The only problem for Spellslinger is it had a very low base APS, which made the whole thing feel a little bit clunky. Running faster attacks in my links was manageable. So I used that for quite a long time. The next problem I ran into, as I was transitioning into Coldslinger, was I realized Wintertide Brand didn't sling particularly well, at least in comparison to something like Creeping Frost. The first problem was, Wintertide Brand has a relatively short duration. You can also put 3 brands on a target. What this means is you have to constantly keep attacking and keep rebranding the target so that the damage remains consistent. It's very fast at clearing. In fact, Wintertide Brand is one of the fastest ways that you can play Cold Dot right now if just clearing maps is your goal. On top of this, the mana costs were higher. And finally, it required brand nodes on the tree. This meant there was a level tax to adding that to my build rather than using Creeping Frost. So Creeping Frost is what I went with. This was much smoother as a slinging experience, I saved on mana, and I had roughly the same damage. I also found it incredibly helpful to use Power Siphon over Frenzy. I had experimented with Power Siphon originally, then I swapped to Frenzy for a bit, and then I went back to Power Siphon, because once linked up to Hex Touch, Vol Power Siphon let me hit everything, which caused things to explode from Profane Bloom. Now, if you have Curse on hit rings, or if you're not really worried about Profane Bloom because you don't have it, I could see Frenzy for a little bit of extra move speed being worth it. The damage I gained on my Cold Dot skills was comparable, a 10% cull when I'm attacking pretty frequently, as opposed to 12% more damage. The 2% there is really negligible, especially when you're mapping, but the ability to press Vol Power Siphon and just the entire screen is now cursed more than made up for the fact that I attacked a little slower and did slightly less damage. And I know someone's going to say, well, why didn't you just put it on a Blasphemy? And my answer to that is, a Blasphemy is a massive waste of mana when you're already reserving so much to run 2 Spellsling skills. Between running the Frostbolt Spellslinger and also the other Cold Dot, be it Cold Snap or Creeping Frost or Wintertide Brand, you're just not going to have the mana to also fit in a Blasphemy unless you had an amulet that made it reserve no mana, which I didn't have, and so that wasn't an option. All that said, I do think Wintertide as a self-cast skill is excellent, and it probably would be what I'd use if I was going for self-cast Cold Dot. I'd take Wintertide Brand, I'd eat the small level penalty, and I'd integrate that with Vortex, stand on enemies, and just kind of laugh at them. The final thing that I noticed was there were certain situations where my recovery was lacking. I had a high spell block chance, and I was using Aegis Aurora in combination with Divine Shield. So I was quite tanky against physical damage. I was relatively tanky against hits in general. However, I was incredibly weak to degens. On my other character, the cast on crit CI Forbidden Right, this was solved by having ES on hit. And just better gear in general so that the regen from my Bottled Faith kept me up fine. I did try Sulphur Flask, thinking, oh, maybe this will fix it. It certainly helped, but not enough that I ended up going with it. I decided that going with a Basalt Flask for extra defenses was far more preferable. Instead, what I did is I added a little Leech. Vortex has a decent initial hit, as does Creeping Frost. So what I found was I'd get a decent amount of ES Leech, and it was just enough that my ES recharge would kick in, and then I'd be fine. Again, to be clear, this is my day 3 gear from the Atlas invasion. This character isn't min-maxed. There's a lot that I'd do differently, but I've learned quite a lot about the ins and outs of a Cold Dot skill. For one, I don't think I'd go Spellslinger as CI. I think if I was going CI, I'd go Wintertide Brand, and I'd pair that with Vortex, and I'd play Selfcast. I do think that's a very viable option, and quite strong into the endgame. I also don't think that Spellslinger is the ultimate endgame min-max. It feels like it's much more of an even choice. Spellslinger is going to feel a lot smoother to play, and it's going to be safer, but you lose one major aura. You're basically giving up Zealotry as the cost. Now, in min-max gear, you should have enough damage to do bosses regardless. I certainly didn't, but that's because that wasn't really what my character was built for. I don't think I did a map over tier 12, and so my damage was tuned accordingly. What I most likely would have done is reworked my tree, and I would have transitioned from mostly just defenses and ES, to defenses and ES with a bit more damage. Speaking of my tree, the reason it looks the way it does is I started as a life build, and I didn't want to have to regret a ton of points. So I took some choices that weren't necessarily 100% optimal, like the cold nodes above Witch. They were, however, really easy to pick up as a life build early on, and good enough to use later. So my tree does look a little bit weird. Ultimately, I think I would have wanted to go down towards the Scion area, instead of spreading out quite as much as I did. I don't think I would have wanted the Determination Reservation Mastery, instead I would have gone down, picked up another Aura Wheel, and called it good. But I had already been over on that side as a life-based build, because some of the best life nodes on the tree are over there. This was again a matter of an easy transition rather than the most optimal pathing. And that's why I'm not advising anyone to use my POB as, okay, I'm going to copy this character and play it. All that said, how did the build perform? Super smooth. I found it really easy to transition from life-based directly to low-life around day 2, and I found that the thing I was dying to most commonly was Corrupted Blood. Unfortunately, it took me a little bit to get a Corrupted Blood jewel because trade was rather anemic on Atlas Invasion. So if you're doing this in a League for real or playing in SSF, do be aware Corrupted Blood is going to be a major problem until you get that jewel, and maybe grab a Mastery to kind of band-aid the problem. It'll cost you a few skill points, and it'll save you a few deaths. That said, even in low-red maps, I was fighting bosses like Shaper and Elder, and I could take hits from them. I couldn't just AFK in the Shaper Beam or anything like that. Maybe with something like Vaal Discipline up I could have. But this is also a League Start build on what I would consider relatively League Start or relatively budget gear. So it shouldn't need to do those things. What it should need to do is give you a basis to continue to farm currency and continue to progress. And that's exactly what it did. Did I have access to some uniques that might have been more expensive in a normal league? Probably. Shavs was 7C and the Aegis was 15C. They're most likely going to be more expensive in a real league. At the same time, I'd be able to make a lot more money in a real league, so I'd probably have the items either way. And if you progress your character more slowly, then don't think of this as day 3 gear. Think of this as day 7 gear. From here, what I'd probably do is I'd continue to min-max with Spellslinger. I'd work on getting a better wand. I'd work on raising my damage overall, probably by fixing my tree, moving away from the janky, it worked but I had to respec it, into a proper tree made for Coldslinging that does path more towards the middle. And from there, it would mostly just be about scaling the damage. My defenses felt suitable, and I'm sure with better gear the ES would have scaled up to 7 or 8k, which would have been more than enough for an event like this. However, I kind of lost interest, and I wanted to start playing some other games, like Torchlight 2, which I'm going to be talking about soon, like Loop Hero, which is going to be a video on my second channel. Be sure to sub to that if you like other types of games that aren't action RPGs, and many more things coming soon. My goal of this video is to provide some information on what problems I encountered, why I encountered them, and what I did to solve them. So I hope you found it helpful. And if you have, I'd love to hear about some of your experiences transitioning builds, or what you struggle with, down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below, or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.